Hey everyone, you're watching We Had That, and today I'm going to talk about the 1987 Wave 6 G.I. Joe Crazy Legs action figure. Crazy Legs wasn't part of the last wave of G.I. Joe figures that I picked up as a kid, but he was pretty close. I got a few figures the next year in 1988, but I don't really remember playing with them very much. So Crazy Legs probably was part of the last batch of figures that I actually played with. I only picked up a few figures in 1987. I remember Falcon and Outback saw a lot of action, but I don't remember how much I actually played with Crazy Legs specifically. According to his file card, Crazy Legs could have been the greatest organist in the world if his fingers hadn't been too short. His file name was David O. Thomas. There were several composers whose names were David Thomas, but I'm not sure Crazy Legs was named after any of them specifically. I'm sure David Thomas is a pretty common name. I mean, maybe he was named after the guy who started the Wendy's restaurant chain. Anyway, the file card goes on to say that Crazy Legs is an airborne ranger who's brave enough to jump out of a helicopter into a firefight and then calmly run headfirst into battle. If you've watched any of my other videos for figures who came out later in the 80s, you'll know that my favorite Joes were usually the ones who looked like they'd actually be in the military. So it surprises me that I liked Crazy Legs a good bit despite his outfit. Although his arms and legs were primarily gray with black boots and tan gloves, Crazy Legs wore a bright red helmet with black goggles and had matching bright red accents on his shoulders and legs. Even worse in terms of camouflage was his entire torso was also matching bright red. Even though he had a black hand grenade and a black knife molded onto his chest, he really didn't look all that much like a soldier with so much red in his uniform. Granted, it did make for a nice color scheme for a kid's toy, but it would have made him a great falling target for enemy fire when he parachuted out of a helicopter. He had a gray pouch molded on his right leg and several black pouches on his belt. He also had a row of gray pouches and some clips molded onto his left leg. He had a gray pouch on each forearm. In terms of gear, Crazy Legs came with a black EM4 assault rifle with detachable stock, which is typically missing, and also a tan parachute. But unlike most G.I. Joe figure pieces like this, it didn't attach to his back with a peg. It actually wrapped around his body and legs more like a real parachute would. One common problem is a lot of kids apparently held the gun under the parachute as shown on the file card, and if left like this over time, it would bend the gun and the stock. So if you're buying a Crazy Legs figure with all his gear, look out for this. The logistical issues with the red in his uniform were addressed the next year when Crazy Legs was given a new paint job for the 1988 Night Force team. This figure looks great. However, for some reason they decided to paint the pockets on his forearms, which were originally left unpainted gray, with a bright red, a color that wasn't used anywhere else on the Night Force version of the figure. He was mostly black and dark green. In this case, the red doesn't even look all that great, and it would make him easier for the enemy to spot, so I don't know what the designers at Hasbro were thinking. Night Force Crazy Legs came in a Toys R Us exclusive 2-pack with the figure Outback. Night Force Crazy Legs had the same accessories, with the gun and stock molded in the same color black, but this time the parachute was molded in black instead of tan as well. Even though several of the characters that were introduced in 1987 as part of the sixth wave did appear in the Sunbow G.I. Joe cartoon movie, Crazy Legs was not among them. In fact, he never appeared in any of the G.I. Joe cartoons, but he did make a fair number of appearances in the original run of the G.I. Joe Marvel comic book. Crazy Legs' first appearance in the G.I. Joe comic was about 2/3 of the way into issue number 69 in March of 1988 in a story called Into the Breach. Crazy Legs first appears guarding a C-130 cargo plane at an airport in the fictional country Sierra Gordo. This was happening during a time of government transition and intense rioting, so there were a bunch of political refugees asking for help getting out of the country. Crazy Legs was part of the team guarding the plane while they waited for a team of Joes who needed to get out of the country after a mission. While waiting for the rest of the Joes, several of the Dreadnoks showed up in the Thunder Machine and take one of the political refugees hostage to convince Wild Bill to take off now with the Dreadnoks aboard. They load the plane with the Dreadnoks, the Thunder Machine, and the refugees and take off without the rest of the Joes. The plane is fired upon during takeoff, and as the comic book ends, we learn the plane is about to crash. The story continues in issue number 70 with the Dreadnoks yelling at Wild Bill and blaming him for the imminent plane crash. This issue is the one that arguably features Crazy Legs the most. He's in the back of the plane trying to prepare the refugees for impact, but language becomes an issue. A child who's being held by his mother flies from her arms as the plane goes down, and Crazy Legs jumps to save him. Then, the Thunder Machine comes loose from its straps, and Crazy Legs jumps out of the way while holding the child, saving him again. Despite the bumpy landing, everyone gets off the plane and away from the wreckage just before it explodes. Issue number 71 is the first to have Crazy Legs on the cover. As the story from the last couple of issues continues, the team is still trying to get out of Sierra Gordo. Crazy Legs has two noteworthy moments in this issue. First, he knocks out Thrasher with the butt of his rifle, and then later in the story, as shown on the cover, Crazy Legs pulls Thrasher back into the plane after Thrasher falls out. Crazy Legs next shows up a few issues later in number 74 during the attack on Cobra Island, which seems to include pretty much every Joe, at least for a panel or two. First, Crazy Legs can barely be seen in the background of a group image. Next, he's seen being pulled out of the wreckage of a helicopter that's been shot down. And last, he's in the background again, but mentioned by name as needing a medevac. Is Crazy Legs in issue number 75? I'm honestly not sure. Is this him still waiting for a medevac from issue number 74? I really don't know. Crazy Legs doesn't show up again until 1991. In issues 108 and 109, a group of Joes heads to the Middle East to stop Cobra from doing whatever Cobra was doing at the time. Tomax and Zaymot capture a bunch of Joes, and due to a misunderstanding with Cobra Commander, they give the kill order to a Range Viper, who first kills Doc and then a bunch of other Joes. A few of the Joes escape riding a stolen Cobra range tank, which is blown up, and Crazy Legs, along with Breaker and Quick Kick, are killed. Hawk orders an empty boot ceremony for the fallen Joes, in which we see Crazy Legs' helmet and boots along with an M16, which actually wasn't his gun. Regardless of the rifle, those were a couple of heavy issues of the comic. In addition to the comic books, Crazy Legs showed up in a few more places too. The box art for the Slam in 1987 includes Crazy Legs, and he's one of the mini Joes on the 1987 Mobile Command Center box art. I'm not sure, but that might be Night Force Crazy Legs in the window on the box art for the Night Striker. It could also be Night Force Crazy Legs on the box art for the Night Raider. He's shown parachuting into the scene on the right side of a G.I. Joe puzzle, kicking the Dreadnok monkey wrench in the face, and he's also the character featured on the package for the G.I. Joe sticker Valentines. But probably the most interesting to me is Crazy Legs' prominent appearance on the cover of the G.I. Joe book Jungle Raid, written by R.L. Stine. Yep, the same guy who wrote the Goosebumps books. What do you think of Crazy Legs? Did you have this figure as a kid? Was he a key player in your adventures, or was he just waiting around the base for orders? Tell me in the comments below. Also, please give this video a like and share it on social media. If you enjoy my content, please subscribe to my channel and hit that notifications bell so you'll be notified when I post new videos. And one last thing, if you're a fan of toys, you should know about ToyLanta, the biggest toy show in the southeastern United States, held annually just north of Atlanta, Georgia. Visit ToyLanta.com for more information. As always, thanks for watching.